area here in Latvia is like this forested terrain.
Hey everybody, welcome to Go Bold. My name is Jody Atariwala and I'm your host. And today we are at Camp Adazi in Latvia, and we are at the ExCon facility for Exercise Silver Arrow. And I'm joined with Major Dave Nelson, who is from the Canadian Manoeuvre Training Centre. Dave, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Awesome. It's great to be here, and I want to get an appreciation for what Exercise Silver Arrow is and what ExCon is and how you guys basically evaluate the forces that are out in the field, which I think is essentially why you're here.
Yeah. So Exercise Silver Arrow is a Latvian-led exercise. It's led by the Latvian Mechanized Infantry Brigade. And Canada uses it as the vehicle to complete the NATO Combat Readiness Evaluation for the Canadian-led multinational battle group.
Okay. And so how do you guys carry out your remit? Like, how do you evaluate the forces that are out in the field?
So what we do is, with the Latvians, we create the exercise construct that will allow the battle group to go through all of the operational functions that it has to be assessed on through the CREVAL. And then CMTC provides the core of the CREVAL team that conducts that evaluation on behalf of NATO.
Okay, and so here we are in this ExCon, so exercise control facility?
Yeah.
Right, and so how many people do you guys have? Like, what? I guess for those that aren't familiar with how some of these exercises are adjudicated, how do you go about doing what you're doing, and how do you maneuver people around?
So for the like adjudication and process of this exercise, unlike some other training establishments where you have access to a weapons effects simulation, on this exercise we run it old school, a lot like they did back in the old RV days before like CMTC stood up as a formation.
Sure.
So we have observer controllers and umpires out with all of the maneuver elements that are in the box or in the training area. And they observe what both the Blue 4 does, the Op 4 does, who they're shooting at as they're interacting, and then they communicate back and forth to assess casualties, battle damage from those engagements. Okay. So it's very, very chaotic on the flow, and we have a good, fairly large team out there to enable that sort of exercise control part of it, to ensure that the PTA is getting feedback on their tactics, how they're operating, and their own soldier skills to get those effects on the training area.
And so here, being in Latvia, and it's a Canadian-led multinational battle group that's being assessed here, so that means there's a number of different nations that are participating. Do they all have injects into what you guys are doing, or is it CMTC that kind of drives what's happening here?
Certain countries provide specific capabilities to the multinational battle group. For example, the Albanians provide the EOD counter IED response for the battle group. So we make sure that we have specifically designed training injects for them so that they can exercise those skills and practice them.
Okay, interesting. So I'm gonna take over, and I'm gonna just now ask you to kind of describe what we're looking at here in terms of like the map. You know, when I see this, it makes me think of the old kind of, and I mean no disrespect in this, but kind of like the old World War II days where people were moving things around on a map. So.
The heart of ExCon is around our situational awareness, right? So that we understand what's going on on the exercise, so that we can shape it if required and make any tweaks.
Sure.
Here in our ExCon, we have a combination of both the old school analog battle tracking, as well as leveraging the computer for updated situational awareness. All the stuff we're using here is open source. None of it is classified.
Sure.
And we really essentially double bank having our digital situational awareness, but as is the nature, power can go out here fairly regularly, so we always have to have our analog backup. And because of how the digital is updated and how we monitor the different communications channels and plot them on the analog, a lot of the times it's more up to date than any of the digital software.
Interesting.
And so we have our duty officers who monitor the training audience's comms, both digital for the Danish and the voice comms for the multinational battle group. And also monitor the communications of the OCTs who are with those elements to build a ground truth, so to say, of what is happening, where, and where people are.
So yeah, there's that saying, right? Truth in training, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess you guys provide that, because you and your colleagues, the observer, controller, trainers.
Yeah. So everyone always has their own point of view when they're going through a training scenario.
Right.
And what we do with our OCTs at CMTC, we take the perspective of the training audience and what they saw happen. We take the perspective from the OPFOR, because we have OCTs with that OPFOR, and they can see what the opposing force is seeing. And we kind of amalgamate that to create honest, unbiased feedback for the PTA about what has happened here, and then to pull out the training from that with them. So we, through the AAR process, asking them the kind of questions, showing them the kind of products, and the ground truth as it was, as opposed to what they saw from their own point of view.
Right, right. So talk to me now about being here in Latvia. Like, how does the training differ here from that you would deliver in Canada, or is there any difference?
The biggest difference delivering it here in Latvia is having to work with essentially 11 different countries that are in the multinational brigade, the host nation of Latvia, and in the battle group itself. So it's coordinating all of those different national nuances as we're creating the training for the battle group.
Right, right. Interesting. And so we are now at midway, roughly, through exercise Silver Arrow. What is the current state of affairs in the exercise as it stands today, and how has your exercise control gone thus far?
So we're at the end of the planning cycle of the exercise for the training audience, on the beginning of them actually fighting their plan. So far, they've had a fairly solid planning process, and we're providing them feedback along the way for where we see like gaps might be in their planning. So the OCTs are always involved. They don't necessarily wait for the end of it to capture all of the learning. We're always providing that constant feedback. Not to change what they're doing, but just to enable them to learn as they're going, as opposed to trying to wait at the end. That's been ongoing. It's been successful. And now we're getting to see the translation of what their plan was to how effective it'll be on the ground.
Interesting. And so training for the Canadian Army, the land forces in the Canadian Armed Forces, seems to be moving here to Europe, as opposed to how it has been carried out in Canada for the last little while. I think there's good reason for that. I'd love to just kind of hear your thoughts about doing the training out here as opposed to some of the more traditional ways that we've done it in the country itself.
So one of the biggest reasons we have to do this training out here as opposed to back home is because the battle group is multinational, the battle group headquarters is multinational, pulling from all of the different nations. They don't form until they get out here. And as part of the combat readiness evaluation for a multinational team, they have to be formed before you can do that combat readiness evaluation. So that really drives us having to run these exercises here. There are other, cost saving reasons and all of that for driving more training here. But the heart of it is you can't train with people that you don't have back in Canada when you don't get them until you're over here.
Right. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And candidly, in terms of this mission, it's more in the environment of where a potential conflict might happen.
Yeah. So one of the key aspects of this mission is deterrence, right?
Right.
And by doing this exercise near the Russian border, because all of Latvia is kind of near the Russian border.
Right.
It is providing that deterrence, providing that messaging of deterrence.
Yeah, to them, absolutely. So as we close out, Dave, what would you share with people? Like, what have I not asked you that's kind of important for people to know about training in Latvia and what the Canadian Manoeuvre Training Centre is doing? I guess, the big takeaway for me has been that you guys are not locked to a particular base. CMTC can pretty much go anywhere and do what you need to do to assess.
Yeah, since 2017, CMTC has been projecting its exercise control, planning, and opt for to point of need essentially. So right now, the place where we need to do this training is in Latvia, and we've designed ourselves internally to project our capabilities there. We are looking at enhancing and evolving this training here in Latvia to become more in line with the Maple Resolve style training, larger exercises, more intense exercises that will meet our own internal training goals within the Canadian Army.
That's fantastic. Major Dave Nelson of the Canadian Manoeuvre Training Centre, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.